the walls that swallow secrets. The sirens echoed through the narrow streets of Istanbul just before dawn, bouncing off stone buildings still wet from the night rain. Blue lights sliced through the fog as unmarked police vehicles screeched to a halt outside an abandoned textile warehouse near the Golden Horn. Inside, investigators found what no one was supposed to see, a crime scene that had already been cleaned, but not carefully enough. The victim was a former government contractor named Kemal Arslan. No forced entry. No witnesses. Just a single clue left behind on the concrete floor, a prison visitor badge, bent and smeared with dirt, stamped with one name, Silivri Prison. Within hours, Kemal's death was classified as a high-priority investigation. He had once overseen logistics for Turkey's high-security prison system, including Silivri, a massive fortress west of Istanbul known among inmates as the Concrete Graveyard. Few places inspired more fear. Fewer still were spoken about so quietly. Detective Ice Demir arrived at the warehouse just as forensic teams were packing up. She stared at the badge through an evidence bag, her jaw tightening. Silivri again. It was never just a prison. It was a pressure cooker, politics, organized crime, and revenge compressed behind reinforced walls. Ice had spent years chasing cases that ended there. People went in, and truths disappeared. Kemal Arslan had been scheduled to testify in a corruption inquiry tied to prison contracts. He never made it to court. By midday, the badge had triggered a sealed file request. The ministry didn't like Silivri being mentioned in homicide investigations. Too many powerful names. Too many buried scandals. But Ice pushed anyway, and by evening, she was driving toward the prison with a court order and a growing sense of dread. Silivri Prison rose from the landscape like a military installation. Watchtowers, floodlights, razor wire layered so thick it looked woven. This wasn't just incarceration. It was containment. Inside, Warden Haluk Yilmaz greeted Ice with a smile that never reached his eyes. He had run Silivri for 7 years and survived every political shift by knowing exactly when to stay silent. "Detective," he said calmly, "you're here about a visitor badge?" Ice nodded. "I want records from the last 6 months. Every civilian visit. Every cancelled appointment." Yilmaz hesitated just long enough to be noticed. "That's a lot of paperwork." "So is a murder investigation." He finally waved her through. Behind the first set of steel doors, the noise hit immediately. Shouting, metal clanging, distant echoes of men who had learned that shouting was the only way to feel alive. Silivri housed journalists, cartel traffickers, ex-military officers, and men convicted of crimes that never made headlines. Some were guilty. Some were useful scapegoats. All were dangerous in different ways. Ice escort led her down a restricted corridor to an observation room overlooking cell block D. "This is where your badge comes from," he said. "High-risk inmates. Limited access." One name jumped out from the file spread across the table. Murat Kalkan. Former organized crime enforcer. Life sentence. Transferred to Silivri after a failed prison riot 2 years earlier. According to the logs, Murat had received exactly 1 visitor in the past year. Kemal Arslan. Ice felt the room tighten around her. Why would a government contractor visit Murat Kalkan? The guard shrugged. Officially? Oversight. Unofficially, nothing at Silivri happened without a price. Ice requested surveillance footage. What she saw next made her pulse spike. Kemal entered the facility calm, confident, carrying a slim folder. He never left with it. Cameras caught him exiting the visiting wing empty-handed, his expression shaken, eyes darting like someone who had just been warned. 2 weeks later, Kemal was dead. Ice asked to speak with Murat. The interview room was small, soundproof, and cold. Murat Kalkan was brought in wearing standard gray, hands cuffed, posture relaxed in a way that made guards nervous. His eyes were sharp, calculating. "You knew Kemal Arslan," I said. Murat smiled faintly. "Many people know many men who end up dead." "What did he give you?" Murat leaned forward. He wanted forgiveness. For what? For building a prison meant to erase people. Ice pressed him harder, but Murat clammed up, requesting a lawyer. As he was escorted out, he turned back and dropped a single sentence that hung in the air like smoke. "Check the old wing. The one they say is empty." The warden denied its existence. According to official records, Silivri's old underground wing had been decommissioned after structural damage years earlier. Sealed. Inaccessible. That night, I stayed late, combing through archived blueprints. Most pages were missing, but one schematic remained, folded into a forgotten file. It showed a sublevel beneath cell block D, unlabeled, unregistered, and still connected to the power grid. The next morning, with a court order and a reluctant escort, I stood before a rusted steel door hidden behind a maintenance corridor. No signs. No cameras. The guard hesitated. "No one's been down there in years." Ice nodded. "Open it." The lock groaned as it turned. The door creaked inward, releasing a stale breath of air that smelled like damp concrete and secrets long buried. And when the lights flickered on, revealing what lay inside the old wing, Ice realized Kamal Arslan hadn't been silenced to protect the past. He'd been killed to keep someone hidden. The prison beneath the prison. The old wing didn't look abandoned. That was the first thing Ice noticed, and the most terrifying. Lights hummed faintly along the ceiling, newer than the rest of the structure, casting a dull yellow glow over reinforced doors that lined a narrow corridor. Each door had a number, not painted but engraved, as if someone never wanted them scratched away. The air was colder here, heavier, pressing against her lungs like a warning. "This isn't decommissioned," Ice said quietly. The guard swallowed. "It's not on my clearance." They walked past cells that should have been empty. Some were. Others showed signs of recent use. Fresh scuff marks on the floor, food trays stacked neatly, a thin blanket folded with military precision. Someone had been living here. Recently. At the end of the corridor, a single door stood out. No number. No window. Just a biometric scanner embedded in steel. Ice felt her pulse spike. "Who's in there?" The guard shook his head. "No one official." That answer told her everything. Before she could push further, the corridor lights flickered, then shut off completely. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing the wing in red. "Power fluctuation," the guard said too quickly. Ice backed away from the sealed door. "Get the warden. Now." But when they returned to the surface, Warden Haluk Yilmaz was gone. His office was empty. Desk cleared. Computer wiped. Even his family photos had been removed, leaving pale rectangles on the wall where frames once hung. It looked less like a sudden departure and more like a planned disappearance. Within an hour, the ministry called. The underground wing was labeled a misinterpreted maintenance area. Ice was ordered off the case pending internal review. She refused. That night, as rain battered her apartment windows, Ice received an encrypted message from an unknown number. "You opened the wrong door." Attached was a grainy surveillance clip dated 3 years earlier. It showed a man being escorted into the underground wing, hands cuffed, face bruised, posture rigid with defiance. Ice recognized him instantly. Emre Sankak, investigative journalist, declared a fugitive after exposing ties between organized crime and state contracts. Officially, Emre had fled the country, but the footage showed him being buried alive beneath Silivri. Ice replayed the clip again and again, her chest tightening. If Emre was still alive down there, Silivri wasn't just holding prisoners. It was erasing people. The next morning, Murat Kalkin was found dead in his cell. Official cause: suicide. But Murat had been under constant watch. No sharp objects. No privacy. And yet, he was gone less than 24 hours after hinting at the underground wing. Too clean. Too fast. Ice pushed her way back into Silivri under the pretext of confirming records. Guards avoided her eyes. The atmosphere had shifted. Word traveled fast in places built on silence. She slipped away from her escort near cell block D and followed a service corridor she'd memorized from the blueprints. At the biometric door underground, the scanner was smashed, destroyed deliberately. Someone didn't want it used again. Footsteps echoed behind her. I spun, heart racing, but it wasn't a guard. It was Layla Aydin, a junior prison nurse Ice had interviewed months earlier on an unrelated case. Her face was pale, eyes darting. "You shouldn't be here," Layla whispered. "Then neither should you," Ice replied. "Tell me what's down there." Layla hesitated, then spoke in a rush. "There are inmates who don't exist. No records. No trials. They're kept off books. Some are interrogated. Some are forgotten. And Emre Sankak?" Layla's silence was answer enough. Before Ice could ask more, alarms blared through the prison. Doors slammed shut automatically. "Locked down." Layla backed away. "They know you're asking questions." Gunmetal boots thundered down the corridor. Ice grabbed Layla's arm and pulled her into a storage room just as guards rushed past. From the crack in the door, Ice watched as a stretcher was wheeled toward the underground wing, covered with a white sheet. Too small to be Murat. Too deliberate to be coincidence. "Who's that?" Ice whispered. Layla's voice broke. "One of the ones who tried to speak." Minutes later, the alarm stopped. The prison exhaled, but the tension didn't leave. That evening, Ice filed an emergency report to an international watchdog, attaching the footage of Emre, the blueprints, and a summary of Murat's suspicious death. She didn't know if it would get through, but she had to try. As she packed up to leave Silivri, her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You're not the only one watching the walls." Attached was a live camera feed from inside the underground wing. The image was shaky, dim, but unmistakable. A man sat alone in a cell, older, thinner, beard unkempt, eyes still burning with recognition as he stared directly into the camera. Emre Sankak was alive, and someone inside Silivri was risking everything to show her. Before Ice could respond, the feed cut to black. Seconds later, her phone rang. Blocked number. She answered. A calm male voice spoke. "Detective Demir, if you come back tomorrow, you won't leave." The line went dead. Ice stared at the dark screen, realizing the truth had finally surfaced, and Silivri was preparing to bury it forever. The truth that refused to stay buried. Ice didn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Emre Sankak's face staring out from that dark cell, alive, defiant, and forgotten by the world. By morning, she had made a decision that would end her career or her life. She went back to Silivri. Not alone. Before sunrise, Ice sent the full case file, footage, blueprints, witness notes, and Layla's testimony to 3 places at once: an international press consortium, a European human rights legal team, and a foreign embassy known for quietly extracting people before governments could deny everything. Once it was out, it couldn't be pulled back. Silivri was already on edge when she arrived. Armed guards lined the outer gates. Internal checkpoints had doubled. Someone had given orders to lock the prison down completely. Inside, Ice found Layla waiting in the infirmary, hands trembling as she pretended to sort medical supplies. "They moved him last night," Layla whispered without looking up. "The journalist." "Where?" "The old wing deeper." That meant only one place, the final sublevel, a section not even shown on the remaining blueprints. A dead zone where power, cameras, and accountability disappeared. As Ice headed towards cell block D, chaos erupted. A sudden blackout slammed the prison into darkness. Backup generators kicked in unevenly, plunging corridors into flickering half-light. Shouts echoed. Doors malfunctioned. For the first time in years, Silivri lost control of itself. Someone had triggered it deliberately. Ice ran. She followed emergency lights down a maintenance shaft, past the first underground wing, and into a narrow stairwell descending even further. The air grew damp, metallic. At the bottom, she found a reinforced room guarded by 2 men in unmarked uniforms, not prison staff. They weren't expecting her. The first man reached for his radio. Ice didn't hesitate. She slammed the emergency alarm panel beside the door, unleashing a piercing siren that echoed through the depths. In the confusion, Layla, who had followed despite her fear, sprayed disinfectant straight into one guard's eyes. The second lunged, but Ice shoved him back, triggering the door's automatic lock. Inside, the room was small. Concrete walls. A single table. and a cell beyond reinforced glass. Emre Sankak stood when he saw her. "You took your time," he said hoarsely. Ice's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. They never wanted me dead," Emre said. "Dead men make noise. They wanted me erased." He explained everything. How Kamal Arslan had secretly fed him information years ago, how the underground wing was designed as a legal blind spot, how certain inmates were used as leverage or bargaining chips. Murat Kalkin hadn't been a visitor. He'd been a warning. Kamal had panicked when international pressure grew. He'd tried to pull out. That's when they killed him. Footsteps thundered outside. "They're coming," Layla whispered. Emre leaned closer to the glass. "They'll deny this place exists. Unless you make them choose." Ice understood. She pulled out her phone and went live. No commentary. No explanation. Just the camera panning from Emre's face to the cell, the restraints, the locked door, the unmarked guards pounding to get in. Within minutes, thousands were watching. Then tens of thousands. Outside, sirens wailed, not police, but diplomatic vehicles arriving at the gates. The door behind them finally burst open. Men rushed in, shouting orders. One raised his weapon, then froze as he saw Ice's phone held high, the red live icon impossible to miss. "You can't erase a broadcast," she said calmly. Minutes later, foreign officials and internal investigators flooded the underground levels. The prison's leadership collapsed in real time. Warden Haluk Yilmaz was arrested trying to cross the border that same afternoon. Emre was extracted under international protection. The underground wing was sealed, this time officially. Publicly, the government admitted to irregular detention practices. Privately, dozens of names vanished from positions of power overnight. Some truths came out. Others were quietly buried again. Ice was suspended indefinitely. Layla disappeared from public records, relocated under a new identity. 3 months later, Ice stood on a balcony overlooking the Bosphorus, watching cargo ships slide through the water. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You saved one." Attached was a photo. A prison wall, fresh concrete, and a visitor badge embedded inside it, Silivri Prison. I stared at the image, understanding the warning. They had closed the underground wing, but the system that built it was still standing. They thought the truth was finally free. But somewhere behind high-security walls, someone was already planning how to bury it again. And if you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe button.